Good morning, good afternoon, good night, and welcome back to another episode of the Heart to Heart Podcast. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, especially to people in the country of Canada. This man was part of a little bit of a legacy when it came to the Toronto Blue Jays. He's the first person and only person in my lifetime to take the Jays the distance that he did. I'm excited to chat with him about where he's been at in life. He's released a new book, a lot of stuff going on. Today, I'm joined by John Gibbons.
Hey, Greg, I appreciate you having me on here. You know, it's been tough hooking up. It's like I'm all over the map, and then you finally pinned me down, and I'm thankful that you did. So
you seem busy enough with your own social media stuff, having your Gibby talks, and it seems like you got a little bit of podcast going on. How are you managing all this?
Well, you know what, Greg, for my age, it's probably not common what I'm doing. You know, because when that book came out, the guy says, "Well, you guys got to get on social media." I said, "No way. Come on, really?" Anyway, they said, "Yeah, you got to do it, whatever." And then when we started to do a podcast, when they came up with that idea, they said, "You definitely got to be on social media." So what I do is I just fire some stuff out every now and then. I've actually enjoyed it, but my kids look at me like, "Oh gosh,"
it's the way the world's going though. Like if you don't do, like, it seems like it's the only way to grow anything is to be all over all these social media platforms.
Oh yeah, you have to do it. So if I need any help with anything, I ask my kids. You know, they figure it out. But that's kind of how it all happened. You know, I didn't expect to write a book in the beginning either, and then that happened. And because I guess you could say I'm semi-retired. And this is what I do, just like you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm a little ways away from retirement, but I'm excited to chat about the book. How did this even start? How did the Gibby book start? Where did the idea come from? Was this your idea? Did someone think, you know, you're come up in the major leagues and how you got drafted by the Mets and started playing for them? Seemed like a little bit of a short-lived experience for you, unfortunately, due to some injuries and stuff going on. But it seems like you grew your career into being one of the best managers the Jays have had. How did this start?
Yeah, you know, with the book, I got no idea. You know, I do know that my last day in Toronto in 2018, you know, I knew I was gone. You know, we'd already announced it and everything. And like 3 or 4 of the local writers that traveled with us and it became really good friends. When I was saying my goodbyes that last day, they said, "Hey, if you ever write a book, you know, I want to write it." And I thought, I kind of laughed it off. I thought, never even occurred to me, you know, never, you know, I didn't think I accomplished that much, and I didn't think it'd be that, you know, entertaining to begin with. So anyway, so some year or two passes, and then an old buddy of mine who had written a book and used the ECW press up there in Canada, came to me and said, "Hey, you ought to write a book." And so he kind of put things in motion, and that's really how it started. You know, it was right after COVID. It was during COVID. I'm trying to remember. So it's kind of like one of those deals. Hey, let's try something. Have a little fun with it. If it tanks, so what? You know, but it was kind of fun. You know, Greg, looking back over my life a little bit. You know, my kids growing up, and then my baseball career, which, you know, didn't turn out the way I wanted it as far as the playing end of it. And you know, so many good things happened. So many things lined up for me, and I got a chance to manage there in Toronto, and that's kind of what brought me to this point. But never would have thought about writing a book. Would have been kind of embarrassed to even think about writing a book, you know, because I never. First of all, I wasn't a big reader. I'm sure people can tell that, right?
Me too. So, don't worry.
So that's how that all started.
It's a wild. Does it feel like majority of the people that are buying, reading, and are a part of the John Gibbons social media are Canadian? You were a huge part of Canadian baseball. Like, obviously, we only have one team, so it's the team that majority of the country follows. Do you feel like that's where most of your following is?
Oh yeah, definitely. You know, yeah, that's where I made my name. You know, they like me or not, they had to look at me for, you know, 10 years, right? Because you got to speak for the team. You're the team spokesman every night, and so they get to know you. And then you you know, I had 2 stints up there. And the first one, you know, team we weren't very good, so it wasn't like a love affair type thing. Then when they brought me back, Alex Anthopoulos and Paul Beeston, the second go round, that didn't start out great either. But then we figured things out, and eventually the team got back to the postseason right after 22 years, whatever it was. And that's kind of where it all started, you know. Everybody loves a winner, there's no doubt. But I think people got to know me a little bit better. I put myself out there a little bit more, and I, you know, I got to know the Canadian people better, much better too. So And then it was just, hey, we got so many good friends up there, and I tell everybody all the time, I feel Canadian, I don't want to try to insult people with that,
No,
but they're just good, hard-nosed, honest people, love to drink their beer.
that's true.
And in Canadians, if you give them a good effort, you know what, they'll appreciate it, but they want to win. But one team, one country. There's not many managers running around there. But even in the States, you got the other 29 teams are down here, and we really haven't promoted it very heavily down here because people will go, who's this?
I remember I was listening to a story because Toronto's playing Detroit Tigers right now, and even just watching it the other day, they had said something over the air of Detroit fans didn't realize because there were so many Jays fans in the Detroit stadium because of how close it was. They started to realize how close Detroit was to Canada. It's like, what?
Yeah,
You're just right on the border with one another. They didn't even realize we got a team.
Hey, you know what, Greg? What's amazing back there when things started picking up with the team, we'd go out to Seattle, where they're having the All-Star game this week.
Yep.
And that play, the Canadians would come down, from all the cities up there, and would take over that place. It was the most incredible thing I've ever seen, and it was like a home game. And I don't know, it might think it even offended some Seattle folks, And but you'd see them walking around the streets with their Blue Jay gear on and all that. It's like, wow, it's pretty incredible. So I tell everybody all the time now, if you ever get a chance to go to Seattle, if the team's playing good, right, go out there and check it out because it's amazing what took over. But it just shows you when you go back to the early years of the Blue Jays when they won the World Series and the team was popular and they had so many stars on the team.
Yep.
The first team ever to draw over 4 million people. So they'll support Canada will support the team if it's good, right? And you got one team up there. Why wouldn't you invest everything you got into making that team good? Yep. And that's kind of what's happened because we travel well. You'd see fans of ours all over the country wherever we were playing. And naturally, like I said, I got caught up in that because I was the manager when things finally went well, and I got to know people, and I think people. You see a lot of politicians in this game. They throw a lot of BS at you and try to pull one over you. They knew I wasn't that guy that I was going to, hey, I can tell it like I think it is anyway. I may be wrong. And I think people appreciated that a little bit.
You were always a straight shooter, and I think it was definitely highly respected here. And I see what you mean by the Canadian fans following the Jays. Like mine and my wife's anniversary trip every single year is to go to a different ballpark. Like
nice.
September this year, we're at Dodger Stadium. We're at San Diego, like Petco Park, and we're at the Angels Stadium within 6 days, going to see all three of those games in their stadiums. Obviously, they ain't facing the Jays that week, but heading down there, it's the three parks we're hitting this year.
You guys,
so, yeah,
that's pretty awesome. How many have you seen so far?
Originally our honeymoons, we got married in August. Originally, we were supposed to get married in 2020. COVID kind of pushed off. We've got big families, just decided to wait it out. Our original honeymoon was Washington, Pittsburgh, New York, and then finish off at home in a Jays game, and just didn't go as planned. Didn't know with crossing the border how much COVID was going to affect it, so ended up canceling that. So we're just starting out. We've only ever seen the Jays in Toronto. This is the beginning of our trend, but I know that like the closer stadiums like Detroit, Boston, New York, those are stuff that we can hit just within like a weekend's time if we really want to make the drive. So making these big long hauls to start. So
hey, it's gonna be well worth it, man. When you guys end up hitting them all, you're gonna look back someday and say that's pretty cool because there's so many a lot of unique places out there, and it's fun to go watch a ball game.
Especially when you've only seen the Jays and you've only seen the Sky Dome or the Rogers Center, like the full roof coverage. Like I'm excited to just go see some outside ball. Like I grew up playing hardball my entire life, and to go out and see a stadium where you see like the bridges in the background, like you'd see in Pittsburgh, and I really want to go see Wrigley and Fenway, like some of the historic parks, like. Yeah, I'm excited. Like baseball's got such a history and it's huge in my family. It always has been. So it means a lot to just travel and see those stadiums. Baseball's.
Hey, Fenway's my favorite, man. My mom and dad are both born and raised in Boston, right? Okay. So I got that naturally, some of that in me. But there's just something about the history, even like Wrigley. You go to Wrigley, the history behind those places, and they've fixed them up, but they haven't, they're not new stadiums. My favorite thing about Fenway, the clubhouse I mean, the clubhouses are rinky-dink at the visiting clubhouse anyway, because it's very small. There's only so much you can do, but it's never changed, other than maybe some cosmetic stuff. So you think about all the great players
Have been in
in
there.
the history, been in there, right? And then you got to go you walk down these long set of stairs, and you get to this tunnel that takes you out to the dugout, right?
Yeah.
And you're like walking on these wooden pallets, and there's like there's mold on the wall and things like that. You go, hey, I bet Mickey Mantle peed over there or something, or something. But then you come up and you're inside Fenway, and there's just something about that, instead of all these beautiful, like those kind of places. So, man, we'll have fun with it.
I would highly appreciate the Fenway and the Wrigley over the like $1 billion stadiums they're building for like the SoFi in California for their football team, and like all these new, like I think Houston got a new stadium.
Yes. Oh yeah. Everywhere. Well, you know what too? Yankee Stadium, right?
Yeah.
They got the new one. Yeah. The original, what was so awesome about that place is down by the lower levels, by the dugouts and everything. You used to have all these rabid fans would just be sitting there, right? They'd kill you, man. They would come over, you strike out. They would bury you, man. Every word in the book coming at you, right? And then they built this new stadium. And yeah, it's everything's identical pretty much, but all that lower levels, all the corporate seating, right? So half the time there's nobody even in those seats. And the people aren't even watching the game; they're on their phones and all that.
Yeah.
And so it's really it's kind of mellow, And so that's what I miss, man. The people buried,
yeah, like you're starting to see that a little more now at the Rogers Center. Like they put the bench bleacher seatings right beside the away bullpen. And I just went to see my first game there with the new updates to it, because you can the bullpen is at field level, or at like almost the top level, and the fans are just yipping at the pitchers warming up all game.
Oh yeah. Hey, you're gonna have some nut job too. Who's gonna jump in there one day?
Oh man, he's gonna get what he deserves, I think. Now back to the book. It's true. I am about halfway through the book now. I'm enjoying the book. I'm seeing you go through the Mets process.
Hey, real quick. Hey, you're further along in it than I am, man.
I'm waiting for it. I was hoping it was coming out in an audiobooks.
It is August.
I don't have to read it. No, it's actually good. Like I've been sitting down every night reading a bunch of pages, trying to get some chapters in. It's good. It's really good. Like talking about your Mets process, and it was cool because from a fan, you see the sports you see on TV, you see the MLB draft. You don't really see the behind the scenes of what it takes and what a younger adult or kid goes through with scouts. Like especially if you're an all-star player, like or you're even you're a clear pull to be coming into the major leagues. To know what they go through with scouts coming around, like their colleges, and obviously this is way bigger in the States because usually a baseball player here's got to go over there to be able to be recognized compared to our colleges and universities. But you talked about signing with the Mets for $55K. Was that something that you were upset with nowadays, to know how much, like, it seemed like you were almost like abused in the aspect? If someone offered me $55,000 to sign with a Major League Baseball team, I think my head would be so blown up of the fact that I'm going to the show that I probably wouldn't think about it. Is that a harder thing to process than people think?
Yeah, angry. No, it's all kind of relative. 1980 to 40 years ago, but I mean, you look at bonuses have skyrocketed. Darryl Strawberry was the number one pick in the nation that year, and I think he got like 230, 240. I think it was, right. The number one pick in the nation now gets like $8, $9, $10 million, right? So that's how that's changed. But but what the biggest difference in all the other sports is, but I guess hockey's a little bit like it. You can get drafted. You don't go to the NHL right away, but like in the NBA or the NFL, you're going to be in the big leagues. Let's say, call it, or maybe one of the minor league teams for the NBA.
Yep.
Baseball, you're going to go down to the bottom rung usually, and you may never surface. They may never see you again. So these guys, they're doing the draft this week at the All-Star game. All these highly touted guys, half of them probably won't make it, right?
It's wild.
And that's why it doesn't, the attention, it doesn't get the attention like, say, the NFL or something, right? But it's My thinking was, and my dad always harped on. My dad was a big education guy. He said, "Listen, if you're good enough in the end, the money will be there. If it's not, you go back to school, you do something else. Don't get hung up on the money because somebody's out giving you an opportunity to live your dream, right? So
Yeah.
you can't put a money figure on that. Now you make the most of it, and it'll be there in the end. If it's not, well, that's what you got an opportunity. Somebody gave you a chance. That's kind of the way I approached it. Yeah, you look like I could use a little of that money right now, though, if the bonus has been a little bit bigger. But
Do you how many players do you think get drafted in major leagues and go to a team that's already so big and so stacked they don't ever see the playing field when they might have been able to for a different team? Does
oh,
it happen frequently?
nowadays I think it's a little bit different because there is they put so much money into these guys signing bonuses, right? It's a big investment for an owner. It used to be though, if when I got drafted by the New York Mets, who they stunk back then, right? They were in the cellar every year. But if you got picked by a team that was one of the best in baseball, they didn't change the big league team much, right? So the guys in AAA stayed there. So that kept the guys that were in AA, and they could be having great years. Some guys would move, but it wasn't automatic. You could be an MVP in AA. Doesn't mean you're going to go to AAA if there's no room for you.
Yeah.
Now they kind of force it. So I can remember that. It's like, and I used to think, I said, I'm glad I'm with the Mets because if you play well, they're going to move you along. But if you're with one of the better teams, like we used to look at the Yankees back then,
Yep.
and it's like, hang with them, man, because you're not going anywhere. And even that was the beginning of free agency. So the Yankees, when Steinbrenner was around, the old man, he'd dip into that free agency, right, and do all that. So he's going to go out and get at the big names. So that might be your log jam too. And so the Yankees AAA teams were always loaded. They'd pay big money for these guys, but they never go to the big leagues. Where if they were playing with the Mets or some other team, hell, they'd be in the big leagues.
Yeah, it would suck to be one of those guys. Like obviously it's like, oh my God, I just got drafted by the Yankees, but you better be one of the best if you want to be on the field.
Yeah. But nowadays, like I said, though, they put so much money in these draft picks. They're going to get their shot. The lesser guy, not necessarily.
What do you think about the Mets salary cap right now? Or not salary cap, but what do you think about what they're dishing out right now for their roster?
It's like, oh well, you figured to be playing a little better, wouldn't you? It's
Oh
funny because
my gosh. It's almost what is it? I forget how much more it is than the Yankees, but they're number one by a mile.
right. I kind of love it because I think, what, if you're going to own a major league team, right? These guys all got money. A lot of them cry poverty, but that's not the case.
Yeah, yeah.
Because if you win, you reap so much more in return, right? It's like the Blue Jays. They're the wealthiest owners in the corporation there, right? They got the money, and they proved, well, if you put a good product out there, the people are going to show up, and your TV ratings will go through the roof, all that stuff. So it's a you can't lose, right? But some of them still want to toe the line, but with the Mets guy, you probably get a little pressure from the other owners eventually that you back off a little bit, man. You're embarrassed, whatever. You're spending so much, and it just proves too. You can spend all the money in the world, but if you
You're not
don't
gonna
get the
get the
right
prize.
guys,
Yeah. 100%.
yeah. But they won over 100 games last year, so everybody's feeling good, right? And then the Atlanta took them out at that last weekend, and this year it's kind of like they've spit the bed. They brought in Verlander, but Scherzer and Verlander, they're getting older, man. Sooner or later, it's gonna catch them,
Yeah. It feels like just like talking about like getting people out to the games and getting busy when your teams are doing well. It feels like since 2015, like 2014, 2015, 2016 Jays, those guys, like when you got Donaldson, you got Bautista, you got Encarnacion, you got Tulo, you got all these guys that created almost like they were a group, like kind of how the Jays feel right now with Bo and Vladdy and Chapman and these guys, the way that they just play together as a team and they're just exciting to watch. Like it almost seems like they're almost fun to watch regardless of how good they're doing. Obviously, it's much more exciting if they're winning.
Right.
But seems like your Jays back then, like Bat Flip season, like 2015, that brought so many more fans into the Jays, like how exciting it was to see them win. And I'm 28 and I have not so I have obviously never seen a World Series. It has never happened in my lifetime. And so what you did with the Toronto Blue Jays is the highest it has been in my lifetime. Anyone under me, anyone within 30 and younger has never seen the Jays do what you did with them. And I think it brought a much bigger spike into how interested we were in baseball, in watching baseball and supporting the Jays and having an exciting Canadian team.
Yeah. Well, you know, Greg, it had been like 22 years, 23 years since the last time they've been in the playoffs. But you go back, those teams that won the 92 and 93, they had a few Hall of Famers on those teams, big personalities in the game. One thing about our teams, we had some personalities. Now we had some bad guys. We had some guys that weren't necessarily liked throughout the league. You know, Bautista, Donaldson, they were great players, right? But the league didn't like them, you know. And then we had a tough nut Canadian behind the plate, Russell Martin. Tulowitzki came over, and he was kind of, you know, they were great players, but some bad boys and some big personalities. And people that just kind of, it's like it was kind of some villains, you could even say, right? And people love that. Yeah, you know, it's people like that. You know, I even like watching, you know, or teams that when the '86 Mets, what I was with, that's all they were. They were a bunch of bad guys that came together every night, played to beat you, right? And they were very talented. And that's kind of what our team was, not to that extent, the '86 team, but it's like, yeah, people like that, man. It's like, you know, it's like you go to the movies, you go to see the stars, you know, and everybody loves a little controversy every now and then, right? So I think that's important. You're not going to have all choir boys all the time, but if you're going to win, you got to have better players. There's no secret there.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with being emotional either, because I think that works to your favor. Fans love it, a lot of it anyway.
And when you talk about like being like the bad guys, the villains, when you're coming from the Canadian side, like it's not like we have. Yes, there's fans over here that probably knew about Bautista and Donaldson and them being the bad guys or not loved upon the league. As a Canadian who loves the Jays and you're only watching the Jays games, you don't hear about it as much, right? You don't see them as the villain. Right. You only see them as the hero. So you don't see it as much until like Odor and Bautista. Odor, am I getting that right? Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The punch on second base there, like that's when you started to see how much there was the battle back and forth, especially after the bat flip. Like there's not a feeling that I've had in sports in my entire life that was anything like that bat flip of that year. Like you guys going through those playoff runs, like that had to be like in your career, that's got to be one of the most wild feelings that you had throughout your entire career, that the way the Rogers Center was that day.
Oh, number one. Yeah, there's no doubt. And you know what? Like we said a minute ago, been so long, right? Since they've been in the playoffs, right? Then we finally get in. Then we get in, right? And then it's a best of 5 series. We drop the first 2 at home, you know? So it's kind of like, oh, crap. You know, everybody's going, what's going on? Because we had the team. That's the year I grant we should have won it all, right? 16, it would have been a great feat, but 15, I think we should have. So anyway, you know, now you're down 2 games, and you got to win 3 straight or you go home, right? So it's kind of like, but to the guys on the team, we were a confident bunch. It didn't phase us at all, right? So we're going down to Texas, and of course, everybody sees what happens. So then you go to that final game, right? Now we're at home, and our stadium, you know, especially with that roof closed in playoff baseball, full house. I mean, the place would shake, right? And you couldn't, you know, it was deafening, right? And it definitely affected the Rangers because they had that, you know, when they went up ahead in the top of the 7th, and then they imploded in the bottom of the 7th with a couple errors, you know. It definitely had to affect them. But so it was just kind of the way everything's set up, right? It wasn't, you know, because once Alex Anthopoulos made those trades at the trade deadline, it was like a light switch, man. We took off, you know, and then it was like, gosh, it wasn't a gradual thing. So now we get there, we were just kind of rolling along anyway. Then you drop the first 2 and everybody starts to panic, except the guys on the team, right? Everybody's going, oh, and then we come back and win. So there's a lot of drama with it too, you know, to get to that game 5. Yeah, it was, I'll never forget it.
That makes a professional athlete. Going down 2 games and not being a basket case, like I would be like I can barely play golf, Gibby. Like I hit 4 chunks and my game is ruined. Like I can't
Me
imagine.
too. Me too, man.
I'm ready to start getting clubs thrown out of my bag. I don't need them anymore because apparently I don't know how to use them. So it separates the pro athletes with being able to be down 2 games, just going to the next game confident still. Like just like we are, like they were in my opinion, the 2015 Toronto Blue Jays was the best team that we have had since the 92-93 World Series team. Like they were.
Oh, had to have been.
It was incredible to watch. Like even watching the clips of some of the stuff that happened in that game give everyone who's ever watched it goosebumps.
Right. And of course, the bat flip, the big home run couldn't have happened to a better guy, right? Bautista,
100%.
and like I think if somebody else had hit that, it wouldn't have the same effect. It'd have been dramatic, but there's something about Bautista, right? Like I said, he was the rest of the league hated him because they thought he was a whiner and all that. But when he's on your team, you love him. Or if he's, and he's a good guy, but he's emotional, right? Same way with Donaldson. And so, but the fact that Jose does it, and then it was like it was meant to be. Even Joe Carter, hit the walk-off home run to win a World Series, right? The series is over. This one almost has more drama to it, right? Because of I don't know, but it's been so long since the team had been to the playoff.
Oh yeah.
The guy doing it, Joe Carter knows one of the good guys in the game, right? Here you got this villain, Jose, and
So there's a lot of upset people.
Yeah, and guys don't, guys would throw bats or celebrate them, but there was something pretty cool about the way he flipped that thing too. He's like sit there and then just
Last minute, yeah. Oh man,
yeah,
it was incredible. What are your thoughts compared to that team to the team that we have now? Like, what's your feeling on the current Jays? Like, we got to. It feels like every year I have to say we've got a young team. They've got a long way to go. It seems like they've got some years in the league now. It seems like they're having a lot of up and downs with the bullpen. What do you think? How do you think about the current Blue Jays? Do you currently still follow the Jays?
Yeah, because our podcast is kind of.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you have them on too.
Yeah, I mean they're basically that's kind of where our focus is, right?
Yeah.
When we talk, we watch the rest of the league, but that's kind of our focus. But yeah, I like the team. It's coming into the beginning of the season, everybody's picking them to win the World Series. Now that's a little bit unfair,
Stretch.
But that's kind of the way. It's a good thing to be recognized that way. I can remember when I came back my first year in 2013. They made the trades with the Marlins to bring in Burley, Jose Reyes, and then they signed R.A. Dickey, and everybody said, "You're going to win the World Series." I'm thinking, "Oh, I hope you're right," but I know it ain't that easy, right? And then we weren't very good. It took a little while to get some things going. So it's never that easy, right? You think, okay, very rarely is a team that's picked to win it ever win it anyway. So, but I like this team. They've kind of weathered the storm a little bit. It's always nicer now. You got the extra wild card, so that helps things out. But with Alek Manoah struggling early on, he was your top guy. He came back the other night, and hopefully he's back on track.
Yeah,
I mean that's a big hit, right?
Big.
To take. But then you turn around, but then you look and see Berrios and Kikuchi have stepped up when everybody thought, "Oh, this could be ugly," because of the way they pitched last year.
It's nice to see Kikuchi where he is right now. Like that's a big comeback from a guy who had some big struggles for a season.
Oh yeah, oh no doubt. So it's kind of like it balanced out Manoah's struggle, right? Those two pitching so well.
Yeah.
And then I guess kind of what the people kind of look at, well, the offense hasn't been as productive as everybody forecasted, And a lot of the focus was on Vladdy Jr. He wasn't hitting as many home runs. It took him a while. He didn't hit his first home run at home.
Yeah.
For the last few weeks, which that's hard to believe, right?
It's very hard to believe. Yeah. I couldn't believe when that statistic came up.
Yeah. But the key is they're right there. They're sitting in a wild card spot right now. That's all that matters. The downside always been in that league. The American League East is the toughest division by far. You look in the American League Central, I don't even know if the team leading the Twins are even 500. It's like, come on, that's embarrassing, right? So that so they're facing the tougher teams more often. So that's you're not going to win all those, but they have struggled against the American League East. That's kind of been the mystery. Where last year they played really well, but they're in a good spot right now. They'll come in. Now the key is general managers, where they got to look at the team. Where can we improve to make a difference? Like in 2015 when Anthopoulos went out and made those deals because that's what we needed, right? Now I don't know if there's many holes on the team they can fill or guys you can replace on this current team, but you got to do something to beef it up, right? And but yeah, if it ended today, they're in the playoffs, and that then even Tampa though got off to a historic start, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, if they got off to a normal start, who knows what the race would look like right now. But then they just lost 6 in a row, and then Baltimore closed within 2 or 3 games of them. So that's kind of how the game works. You got to expect these, but there's no doubt the Blue Jays have to play better against the American League East. But now it's just get in the door, man. And then it's funny, like when you go back to this 92, 93 teams, they played a couple rounds and they're in the World Series, right? Now you got you got the wild cards, and you play a lot more games in the postseason, so it gets awfully tough that way. But yeah, they have everything they need. They just got to be playing good at the right time. But it would be shocking if they didn't get in. Put it that way.
Yeah. Do you think that you saw when you were managing the Jays a player that had struggled as much as Manoah? Like where you had someone that was like the guy came out last year and put on a clinic, was one of the best pitchers, like won some awards, went to the All-Star game, like, and then you come back to this season and you play that poorly to start off, and then you go play in the junior or the minor leagues and you're getting just eaten up. Like it's obviously such a mind game being in these professional sports, but did you ever have a player struggle like that under you?
No, not to that extent. Not somebody that was so good the year before. He almost won the Cy Young Award, right?
Yeah.
And then, but I do know, Roy Halladay, when he first started off really well in the big leagues, and then he ends up back down in A ball as himself, right? And then he comes back, he's a Cy Young winner. But I wasn't there when he was going through those struggles. I was there when he was, he's back and on top of the hill, right? So no, I don't. Nobody of that caliber. It's almost like it becomes, he's the same guy, right? It's just something mentally clicked, or the struggles got to him, but they did the right thing sending him down before it's too late, and he had a good one in Detroit the other night. Hopefully that catapults him
I hope so
to
too.
his old self, because he's a tremendous kid. He's a real gamer, and he's but if you're going to pinpoint something that maybe where the team struggled this first half of the year, that it would be taking away his performance from last year. That's another 5-6 wins right there, probably. And look and see where you're at then. You add those to your record.
Yeah. Yeah, I deal with a lot of buddies that completely complain all the time about our pitching and our bullpen and all that stuff, but the argument goes both ways in the fact that we've got games where we're losing 11-0. It didn't matter if the pitching sucked or not. You didn't get a run, so you weren't going to win regardless. Like if the bats aren't there evenly, you can't rely on your pitcher for everything. 11-0's rough, but you can't expect to win ball games with 0 runs. So it's just all around trying to get everything worked out. Manoah's a really nice a nice person to have back in our lineup, in our rotation.
Yeah.
Hopefully it stays consistent, because the guy last year, like, he's our villain, in my opinion. He was the guy who had some shit to say, call out Garrett Cole, like got into it nice with the Yankees, which I love. I love that battle between the two of them. So every game, it's like you get that like anger on both sides of wanting to win so bad. So it's nice to see. It's nice to see Manoah back in. I think he deserves to be in the league. Like hopefully he can get out of his head and continue to be a good pitcher. But if
it looks like it that the other night, it looked like he had a good one. So hopefully you're right. That's behind him.
Yeah, I hope so. It seemed like it was just such a surprising beginning of this year. You're so excited to watch Manoah hit the mound, and then you're like, what is going on right now?
Yeah.
Like,
Just shows you, man. It's a hard game to play, man.
Oh, even like seeing Romano close, like certain games, I was not like last year. I was pretty confident when Romano came into close that we were leaving this game in the score that we currently are at, and it's been a little bit of a toss up this year, not knowing whether or not he's going to close the game or not.
That's the beauty of it. That's what keeps you glued to that TV, right?
Yeah, it definitely keeps me glued to the TV. What do you think about Kirk's performance this year?
Well, obviously last year he had a great year, All-Star and all that. That's just kind of, what? He second year, third year, whatever was he in his, I think he's in his sophomore year, right? Second year.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, that's kind of where they used to have an expression for it. The sophomores, I don't know if it was a slump or something, but The other guys in the league know you a little bit better. They've made adjustments, but he can hit. There's no question.
Yeah.
And he's just got to keep adjusted. Plus you got to remember too, when the way they have it set up with him and Danny Jansen, right? The way they utilize him. The ideal setup, the ideal role for a position player, he's out there playing 5 out of 7 days, right? You can say Danny, if you put Danny Jansen in there every day, he hit like his depth. He had that big home run on Sunday, to tie the game in the ninth, 2 outs in the ninth. He could have a monster year, but they split time and they use analytics to determine, I guess, which one's catching. But that's not easy for either one of them, because if they're in there every day, they're playing better. That's just the way it is, right? It's like if you play Bo Bichette at shortstop 4 games out of 7, not all 7, he's not going to be as productive, right? It's just kind of the way it is. And that's probably factoring into a little bit, maybe. But he can hit. There's no doubt about it, and he'll be fine. He's already proven he can hit at this level.
Do you think that we'd be better off having a catcher that's playing more consistently than rotating like we are?
I would like that. If I had, if personally, because I was a catcher, right, and I was one of those guys, and I was an everyday guy. If you're going to put up big numbers at any position you play, you got to be out there every day. But the way they've configured it, the way they think is better for their team, they're doing it that way, and so whatever. But if I had my druthers, I would definitely have one of them out there.
I think last year, obviously, the choice is Kirk. Do you think the choice this year will be putting Jansen full time, or you're
Well, hey,
afraid that he won't stay healthy?
Oh yeah, he's an injury bug that's hit him because he plays so hard, and he's just a tough nut dude. He broke into the big leagues my last year there at 18. He came up, and we played him. We sat Russell Martin down. We said, Russ, his last couple of months we're going to play Jansen, to get his feet wet. And Russ was good with it. So, and I was always a big fan of Danny's. Right? He's like an old school, old throwback catcher. He'd be like one of those old time hockey goalies or something, didn't wear a mask, just yeah. So I'm a huge fan of, and you look at the record last year when Danny Jansen caught, incredible. I don't know how many games over 500, and with the other guys catching, it was a couple games below 500. So that kind of tells me everything I need to know.
My mother-in-law is gonna love hearing you say this stuff. She is such a big Jansen fan, and I had my moments last year where I had my ups and downs with him just because of his health and how good Kirk was playing. I was just kind of confused of where we were throwing him in and what we were doing. Shit on him a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. Just didn't know if we should keep him. And now, like every single time he hits a home run, gets on base, makes a play, I get a text message. Hey, look at Danny.
Hey, one of the good guys, man.
He is.
He's a team leader. He'll do anything for you. Yeah, because even during the offseason, the last offseason was the talk was they got 3 catchers. They get them, the other kid Moreno. They're gonna have to move one of them, right? And so they chose to. You couldn't lose. All 3 of them were so good. You can't lose. And then of course they go out to Arizona, and then him and Gurriel are both playing well out there. So, but that was a tough call. It's a tough decision what you're going to make. But in my mind, Danny Jansen's always he's just a winning type player. He's going to help you win, and he's so good with the pitching staff.
He's an experienced player at this point, like 5 years in the career. He's a guy that can talk to people like Kirk and get them through certain situations, being a rookie, right? Or being a sophomore.
Hey, Danny would be a great manager someday if he ever chose to.
You interviewed him recently, didn't you?
Oh yeah, we had him on a couple of times. He's one of my boys, man. Oh,
that's cool. That's so.
And like I said, man, if you need anything, he'll do it for you.
Would you manage again?
Oh yeah, I'd love to. The door's kind of out. It may be completely shut, but it may not. There might be a little crack in it. But I miss it.
Saying there's a chance.
Oh yeah, if somebody's if I could get another interview, I'd do it in a heartbeat.
I was excuse me. I was searching up some statistics on you, and it seemed like your Wikipedia page and some of the MLB pages that pulled you up had a lot to say about your ejections. Did you hear that a lot?
Yeah, because he's an angry young man. One of those.
It's funny because most of the people that write those articles are people that didn't even watch you manage, like just kind of taking it off specifically off statistics. A lot of them were debating whether or not getting ejected as a manager hurt or helped your team. Do you have an opinion on that, whether or not it would help or hurt?
No, but it didn't matter to me, man. If I got frustrated or if I was going out there to argue. You know, one thing,
I don't
Greg,
think it hurts. I don't think it hurts at all.
I
I think
don't
it shows that you are
know.
supporting your team, you're defending them, you're here for them, and it gets them fired up. They're gonna toss them
I
after these shitty plays. Let's make there's nothing that the umps can do right now that's gonna stop us from winning this ball game.
I agree with you. You know, and one thing I learned this goes back to my playing days. You know, if you want your players to fight for you, you better fight for them, right? It doesn't, you know, it just can't. Because, and I've also been on teams where the manager never argues for you, right? And then you see the other manager on another team across the dugout, across the field there, arguing for his players. You're going, hey, at least that guy fights for his guys, right? So and it's just kind of, so if I want my guys to fight for me, I better do it for them. And I told you we had some guys on the team that were known they'd whine about the strike zone. Bautista and Donaldson were your top two, right? But they were usually right. But the umpires get tired of that, so they'd stick it to them every now and then. There's no question. And so I can't sit back and let that happen, you know.
Man,
Even though it's just kind of the, you know, and you know what? I had guys that would show up every day, play hard, and do everything we asked of them, right? So the least I can do is plus two. Sometimes we stink. If you're not playing very good, you don't want to sit out there and watch all 9 innings. Get ejected and go inside early, man. Let somebody else watch it.
I think there was a write up of you got ejected. There was a bench clearing brawl. You came back out and you got suspended for a game for coming out and helping your team.
Oh yeah, that's see the rule in baseball. I don't know what year they put it in. Is if you've been ejected, you can't come back on the field if there's a fight, right? But I thought that was for players. Okay, if it's for players, I would think you'd want your coaches or your managers out there on the field trying
Breaking
to break
it
things
up.
right? Yeah. So as a matter of fact, that was when they hit Bautista in 2016 after going back to the with an Odor fight, right? So the same thing had happened the year before. I'd been ejected and came back out on the field for a brawl. So they fined me pretty good. And so I came back out. I had been ejected that game, and Tim Leeper, our first base coach, we were down in Texas. So we're inside watching on the TV in the manager's office, and then all hell breaks loose. So I go out there. So anyway, we go back to Toronto when this series is over, and I got a 3-game suspension, and I got fined $4,000. Odor got fined $4,500 for throwing the punch. I said, I'm basically getting fined the same amount as Odor, and I didn't throw it.
You might as well throw a punch. Like,
exactly. Yeah. And so, but their complaint in the commissioner's office, well, you did the same thing last year. I said, really? Why? See, there's so many things happen in rules and the way they hand down punishment. There's like no common sense at all, right? To tell me that your manager or coaches, you don't want them out on the field to break up a brawl. Come on, they're not out there fighting. I've never. So come on. So does that make any sense?
No, if they end up fighting and throwing a right hook, then you just fine them $4,500. Call it a day.
Exactly. So anyway, so I get the message from the commissioner's office that you're suspended 3 days. So Leeper got 1 day. He was in there with me. So we watched the next. I think we played Tampa that next home series. So I sat up in the president's suite, you know, and they had the balcony out there. The Raptors were playing, I think. It might have been a playoff games or something. So we're watching the Raptors game on TV and then watching our game down. That's where Tampa wasn't very good, so nobody was in the stands anyway. They're bringing us ice cream or beer or anything, everything we wanted.
You're on vacation.
I said, thanks, commission. This ain't too bad.
That's hilarious. Oh, man. That's funny. I would have loved to see a fucking headline, John Gibbons punches Odor. That would have been amazing.
It might as well should have, man. If I known I got fined, I would have.
Bang for your buck. It seems worth it.
Exactly.
Now, your opinion on the current league. What do you think about Ohtani? What do you think that he re-signs for? I know everyone talks about the dollar amount that you think he's going to go for, but there's people talking 800 million.
Gosh, yeah, that seems a little far out there for me, but you know, there's some guy, a Mets guy might do it, but I think he ends up I think he's playing for the Dodgers. I really do. You know,
not far of a move. Probably keep his house.
No, it's that much closer to Japan. You know, huge Asian community out there. Big Asian community in Toronto, man. If they want to shell out the bucks,
yeah. I doubt it.
You know, I get surprised all the time by the amount of money they pay certain guys, you know, and I'm thinking, so nothing would surprise me. I tell you, the biggest mistake I would think, though, is the guy for the Padres, Soto. I think before the Washington Nationals traded him, they offered him like $450 million. He turned it down. He goes out there, and he's been so-so. He's been Soto. He's been Soto, so-so. And it's like, this guy, are you kidding me? This guy turns down $450 million, he's not going to get close to that, I wouldn't think. But you know what? There's some bozos out there that might, that have unlimited money. They might do it. I don't know.
Turning down $450 million just seems like such a joke. Like,
and then a little bit arrogant, or it's got to be stupidity. Does he have isn't there anybody in his family who would say, son,
you might be okay for the rest of your life with this.
Would you wake up and you can take care of the rest of us while you're at it?
Yeah, now you don't mind.
He's going to make a lot of money, but he's not going to. I don't think he comes close to that again. He hadn't been that good.
No, not that. Karma. Like, it sucks. Like, you know what? You're a good player, but if you turn down $450 million, then you go to the shit. Like, you get what you get. Like, you take the $450 million, they're signing you regardless of how you play the next season. So get out there and play for that money. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
I know
I would have backed in there and give back. Yes, thank you very much, man. I'll take whatever you got.
Yeah, hey, I'll take that. But I know, obviously, reading your book, you were you played and were friends with the person who, I don't know why I can't remember his name, Moneyball.
Yeah, Billy Beane.
Beane. So that's where my mind goes to when you talk about paying these players. Like, they're talking $600-700 million for Ohtani. That's where my mind goes to. How many all-around good players could you get for that kind of money? Like, it's
yes. See, yeah, I think it's ridiculous, but heck, you might be able to buy a team for that money. It's some of the value.
Yeah, Oakland.
Yeah, exactly. You might get 2 Oaklands for that money. Yeah, I don't understand it. I think it's hey, all the power to it, man. You get what you get.
Yeah, 100%.
But if let's say if like Ohtani was a quarterback or something, he's involved in every play, or even in hockey, like a McGregor or something, right? So Connor McGregor, Connor McDavid.
McDavid.
You better axe that one out of there, man. I might get people would be throwing stuff at the screen when I got his name wrong up there in Canada. I was thinking Conor McGregor, the
dude.
UFC
I have
guy.
said McGregor for him many times.
Oh, okay, we're all right then.
You're right.
But baseball, right? Ohtani, let's say he gets 4 at-bats every night, right? Maybe 5. You know what? Yeah, that's a lot of at-bats he's not getting, right? Like a quarterback's throwing all these passes or whatever, much during the game. And they even if he's pitching, the fact that he does both is what it's all about. He's so
it's
good
incredible.
At both. But I don't think for that kind of money, I don't think he can impact it as much because he's not getting that. See, if he got 10 at-bats a game, it might be something.
Does it come into an account? I guess it obviously has to. But being a great player that no one wants to watch, I don't think is as valuable as being a pretty good player that everyone has to buy a ticket to see. Like, Ohtani's a unbelievable player, don't get me wrong, but I feel like you have that guy in your stadium. I feel like ticket sales have to go up. People want to see him.
Oh yeah,
especially the games where he's opening.
If somebody's going to pay that amount of money, they're making a ton of money off of them, right? And plus, if you factor in what they're getting over in Japan, he's the hero, right? So they're generating so much money over at because these guys that own teams are smart businessmen. They understand how they don't want to lose too much money, so they're not just gonna do something that stupid. I wouldn't think.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think you'll see him in Toronto. I'll tell you that.
I don't think so either. That'd be a pretty wild change.
Wouldn't that be something?
I'm happy with Gausman. I've been liking Gausman.
Oh yeah, he's good, man.
Yeah.
What a great story too. He great arm when he came up with Baltimore because he was pitching there when I was still around, but he hadn't figured it out yet. Then he left there. Not sure where he went. Then he ended up
San Francisco. Yeah.
Yeah. Then to the Blue Jays, but it took him a while to figure it out. These guys that throw that hard when they're younger, it sometimes takes a while to hone it in, man, and figure it all out. And the sad part for Baltimore is they couldn't reap the benefits, and now the Blue Jays are.
Yeah. Well, all in all, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Everyone, please go buy the Gibby book. It's Tales of a Baseball Lifer. You can get it everywhere. And honestly, it is great. This isn't a, hey, thanks for coming on the podcast. Your book is unreal. Because if it sucked, I probably wouldn't even leave it sitting here. It is good. It's a great book. If you want to hear about someone who spent their entire life around the game of baseball in the major leagues, and there's a lot of stuff in this book that go behind the scenes of what you typically see on TV or reading a magazine. Like, you get to see and hear the ins and outs of what it takes to come up in the majors and what it takes to become a manager and work for such an amazing team and create such an amazing team, really. So, John, I thank you for coming on today and sitting down with me and chatting about the baseball. It's definitely a huge thing for me in my life, being able to watch you on television all those years and watch those incredible moments in my life that I'll never forget. So thank you for taking the time and chatting with me today.
Hey, Greg, thanks for having me on. Thanks for being patient.
Hey, no worries.
Because for harnessing me and bringing me on the show, man. I've really enjoyed that, and I'm glad we did this. And anytime, just give me a shout.
If everyone else's scheduling was perfect, I'd feel like I was alone for being the one that's never on time. So it's fine. You're good. I appreciate it.
I am ADHD too, so that's part of the problem.
Welcome to the club. Yeah, it's fun to try and focus on one thing for longer than 6 minutes. Yeah. If people wanted to listen to your podcast, find the book, like, is your main social media just John Gibbons on Instagram?
Yeah, and then in the podcast is the Gibby Show. Yeah.
I saw you on there drinking some Millers.
Oh, that's our big sponsor, brother.
Better send a couple cases. All right, John, God. I appreciate it. Everyone go follow John. Go watch the Gibby Show, and make sure you go grab the book. It's more than you expect. Thanks so much, John.
And the audiobook's coming out in August sometime.
Thank God.
You may not be able to understand it down there, but it'll be me talking.
We can tell how many whiskeys you're at by the time you're at certain chapters. That'd be perfect.
Margaritas.
That'll work too. Thanks a lot, John. I appreciate it.
Greg, thank you, pal.
Cheers.